Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to the study of this session of textual study of the Quran. We're extremely sorry for this delayed start, some technical issue which seems to be have resolved, and I hope it stays resolved. So we are in the middle of Surah Al Nisa. We have completed our discussion on the first 59 verses of Surah Al Nisa. So just to give you a small perspective, that Surah Al Nisa is the one of the Madinan surahs of the first chapter of the Quran, and it forms a pair with the next surah, which is Surah Al Maida. Both these surahs, they complement one another, and just before these two surahs, we have the complementary pair of Surah Baqarah and Ali Imran. And all these four surahs, as we have already discussed, they belong to the Madinan period. The only surah in this chapter which belongs to the Meccan period is Surah Fatiha. So let us start off with Surah Nisa's verse 60. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يَزْعُمُونَ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ يُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يَتَحَاكَمُوا إِلَى الطَّاغُوتِ وَقَدْ أُمِرُوا أَنْ يَكْفُرُوا بِهِ وَيُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُمْ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. Have you not seen those who claim to have professed faith in what has been revealed to you and also what was revealed before you, but want that, leaving aside God and His Messenger, they turn to that rebellious person who is the ringleader of vice, even though they were directed to reject him? So, if we look at the context of this verse, we will see that it is referring to a very prominent leader of the Jews, and it is evident from various narratives cited in Bukhari and Muslim that he was actually Ka'b bin Ashraf, whom the Almighty punished with death once the truth had been conclusively conveyed to him, and this punishment was implemented on him at the behest of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And one can only imagine from this how rebellious he had become. So we know from the law of Itmam al-Hujjah that people who deny a prophet or deny a truth intentionally, they are punished, and this punishment takes the form of death if the nature of their rebellion is such that they have taken to high treason and they have done other things. So Ka'b bin Ashraf was guilty of these things, and he was put to death. And it was this person about whom the Quran says, "Yuriduna yatahakamu ila taghut," that these are the people, these hypocrites. They would go to his. In fact, the Jews among them would go to Ka'b bin Ashraf to obtain a favorable opinion. And instead of actually going to the Prophet, and instead of going to him, so they would actually go to his court and would like to decide for them. So they would like to decide their affairs through them. So these hypocrites, they would do this very commonly, and most of these hypocrites actually belong to the Jews. So we can very well see that such was the nature of their offense, that this person was actually put to death, and they were the ones who were actually seeking his counsel, his advice, his judgment. So the Quran says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ صُدُودًا. When they are told, come towards the book revealed by God and towards His Messenger, come towards God, come towards the book revealed by God and towards His Messenger, you see these hypocrites blindly, totally turn away from you. So, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ ثُمَّ جَاءُوكَ يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنْ أَرَدْنَا إِلَّا إِحْسَانًا وَتَوْفِيقًا. But what will happen when a calamity befalls them on account of what their hands committed? Then they will come to you swearing by God, we had desired nothing but betterment, and we only wanted to create some harmony. So, if you look at this verse, it says, "Iza asabatum musibatun," that what will happen to them when a calamity befalls. So, as far as this calamity is concerned, and about this calamity, it is said that it will befall later. It is that in such a manner that when Islam, I mean, if you can explain, we can explain this calamity by saying that later on, when Islam gained power and the political power of the Jews was greatly weakened, Muslims who at this instance were actually overlooking the hypocrites for their wrong attitude. They were, I mean, just forgiving them, they were pardoning them, and just going along with them. So later on, when this attitude persisted, Muslims were actually directed to change their attitude of this overlooking the faults of the hypocrites. So the Muslims, when this happened, changed their attitude and started to call them to account at every step. This change greatly worried the hypocrites because formerly they were being ignored, and now at every step, whenever they would make a mistake, they would be called to account. So neither were the Jews powerful enough to patronize them. I mean, formerly these hypocrites were being patronized by the Jews, but now, as their back was broken, we know that as the Islamic movement went along, the power of the Jews was greatly weakened. And when this happened, they could not patronize the hypocrites anymore. And the Muslims were also not, at this instance, in any mood to reconcile with them or treat them in a way that they formerly treated them with politeness and by ignoring their faults. So now, at this instance, when this calamity would fall, the Quran says they would have no place to go. The result would be that the hypocrites would then come running to the Prophet and would try to assure him by swearing repeatedly that they did not have any ill intention behind the relations they, until that time, had with the Jews, nor behind at times accepting their superiority. So this is what I mean. This is like cornering the hypocrites when they saw that they had no place to go. Muslims were, not now no longer overlooking their bad behavior. The Jews were also not being able to patronize them. So now they had no option but to come to the Prophet and telling them that if they had any relation with the Jews, it was only because they thought that they wanted some reconciliation. They did not have any ill intention, and their desire was that this attitude would be beneficial for the Muslims, and the gap which had been created between them and between the malice and animosity of the Jews should not increase. So they would pose as if they are reforming the situation. So in this manner, they would also try to conceal their hypocrisy in the garb of reconciliation, and would dub this attitude with the beautiful words of doing a favor and striking harmony. I mean, this is what they would say as if they were doing some favor. But as we can see that the incidents that happened later on, they actually exposed their pretense totally. Now, the directive was given because the Prophet would always be gracious to forgive the greatest of their mistakes. So if you look at the next verse, it says, أولئك الذين يعلم الله ما في قلوبهم فأعرض عنهم وعظهم وقل لهم في أنفسهم قولا بليغا, which means these are the people about whom God knows what is in their hearts. أولئك الذين يعلم الله ما في قلوبهم. So now what is said is فأعرض عنهم, so ignore them, counsel them, and speak to them about themselves in a way that takes roots in their heart. So the Prophet would be always the most gracious in forgiving them their mistakes. The Quran has actually told him that being gracious was not required anymore. Good and evil, they need to be separated. And the good and evil should be fully communicated to these hypocrites, and they be warned clearly that they should mend their ways before God finally seizes them. So, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ جَاءُوكَ فَاسْتَغْفَرُوا اللَّهَ وَاسْتَغْفَرَ لَهُمُ الرَّسُولُ لَوَجَدُوا اللَّهَ تَوَّابًا رَحِيمًا. Tell them, whichever messenger we have sent has been sent that he be obeyed by the permission of God. Tell them that they have committed a grave crime by leaving aside the court of justice of the messenger. If when they had been unjust to themselves, they had come to you, then sought God's forgiveness, and the messenger too had requested for their forgiveness, they would have found God very forgiving and merciful. So once again, this stress that the status of a messenger must be understood. He is not just a person who is being sent with a book. He is a person who is to be obeyed at all cost. He is the fountainhead of authority. He is also the fountainhead of obedience. He does not come so that people merely accept him as a prophet and a messenger without any further obligation. His status is not that of a mere preacher or a counselor. He is a guide who people have to obey, come what may. The very purpose of his advent is to follow without any hesitation whatever guidance he gives them in all the affairs of life. The reason for this is that God does not deal directly with his servants. He guides them through prophets and messengers. No doubt the real objective is to obey God, but the way to obey him is to obey his messenger. So obeying God is basically delegated to the fact that you have to obey his messenger. Also, this obedience is not just a ritualistic thing. The Quran requires from a believer to obey him with the spirit of following him and with full sincerity and with full reverence and devotion. And if a person wants to achieve God's love, he has to obey and follow him. And you've also seen that it says that instead of going to some place else, it would have been better. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ إِذْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ جَاءُوكَ. They should have come to you, O Prophet, whenever they were unjust to themselves, implying that whenever they committed a mistake, uh, and then they should have sought forgiveness, and the messenger too had requested for their forgiveness. But they would have then found God very forgiving and merciful. So this condition of seeking forgiveness for people by the messenger mentioned in this verse needs to be understood. Firstly, seeking forgiveness for them by the messenger is like interceding for them in this world, as a result of which it can be expected that this great sin of theirs will be forgiven. So now you're coming to the Prophet, and the Prophet is conveying your repentance, and this is like interceding for them in this world. Secondly, in the presence of the court of the messenger, their attitude of seeking arbitration from Satan shows their blatant disrespect to the messenger. For this reason, it was necessary that they seek the pleasure and the invocations of the messenger. So remember, we've just seen that they would go to the court of Ka'b ibn Ashraf, who's called a Tahut, and also a Tahut and a Shaitan, they are no two different words. And they are being told that this is something that if you would have done, they would have found God to be forgiving. Tawwab ar-Rahima, someone who would always be in this condition that he would like to forgive people if they are really penitent. So we have to understand that this is a very, very important aspect which the Quran is discussing, that these hypocrites, they are now becoming exposed, and the Quran also wants to expose them. They no longer have the patronage of the Jews who were actually trying to support them, and now they are becoming a big thorn, and the Quran has intended to expose them, and that is why it is saying that a big calamity will fall very soon upon them, in a way that they will be left high and dry, and then they will come to the Prophet and ask for his for his forgiveness, and ask him to ask God for their forgiveness. But if they had done so, then they would have found God to be Tawwab ar-Rahima, very forgiving and merciful. And now this very powerful verse, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. But know, O Messenger, by your Lord, these people shall never be true believers until they accept you as the arbitrator in their disputes. Then, whatever decision you give, they do not feel any uneasiness in their hearts and wholeheartedly submit to it. They claim to embrace faith, and in reality, had we made it obligatory on them, then of course we will continue with this verse in a while, but let us first concentrate on verse 65. So, I think there are no words which are enough to explain this special affection for Prophet Muhammad, which is found in this oath. So, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, which means that, O Messenger, by your Lord, these people shall never be true believers. So, its eloquence can only be estimated by those whom the Almighty has blessed with some literary taste. So, it's like saying that as far as you are concerned, this should have been their real manifesto, that they should have come to you, and whatever decision you would have made, even if it was a worldly matter, they would have accepted you, or should have accepted you, without any sort of ill feeling or ill wish towards that opinion. So we have to understand this in a very proper perspective, that such is the status of Prophet Muhammad, that in his times, when he would give a verdict, the Quran has said that his nature of giving a verdict, of course, is like God giving his verdict, because he was behind his Prophet. And if they in any way would not accept that verdict, which need not necessarily be in a religious affair, then the Quran says that they have lost their faith. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So by God, they are not going to be true believers حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ, until they make you the arbitrator, and they don't in any way dispute this. وَلَوْ أَنَّا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَنِ اقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ أَوِ اخْرُجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ مَا فَعَلُوهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِّنْهُمْ وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ فَعَلُوا مَا يُوعَظُونَ بِهِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ وَأَشَدَّ تَثْبِيتًا. So they claim to embrace faith, and in reality, had we made it obligatory on them, kill your own people or come out of your homes the way we did so in the time of Moses, only a few would have followed this directive. If they complied with the advice they are being given now, it would have been better for them, and as a result, they would have been able to adhere to religion with more perseverance if they had done this. So it's something that we have to understand that when the Quran says that the false oath of the, I mean, we have to understand that the false oath of the hypocrites, which is mentioned in verse 62 that we have just read above. So here the Quran is refuting it by a true oath, and as he explained, it's telling them that the ultimate limit of the status and position of the messenger is that his decision must be accepted by Muslims even in their personal disputes without any hesitation whatsoever and with full satisfaction, let alone for the directives of religion, which I just explained. I think I need to maybe emphasize a little more that here it has to be understood that the Almighty has sworn by Himself, remember, by Himself, and said that these people cannot be regarded as believers until they accept Prophet Muhammad as their arbitrator in all disputes which arise among them, and at the same time there comes a mental change in them that they accept his verdict without any hesitation whatsoever and with full willingness of the heart and without any reservation. So obeying a prophet is tantamount to obeying God. I've just said that. So because such is the nature of this prophetic uh, pronouncement, that if you deny that, it's like denying God or not obeying God. So the Quran has said that had they been given this this directive that you kill your own people, which means, of course, in the times of Prophet Moses, that had happened that people who had committed shirk or polytheism, they were to be put to death by the swords of the believers. And the Quran is telling them that had this directive been given to these people also, very few of them would have followed because they are basically hypocrites, and they are, they would not have done so. And if they complied with the advice they are being given now, it would have been better. So this is like a comment on them that this is something that they would never do. But if they would have done so, lakana khairal lahum wa ashadda tasbita, it would have been far better for them, and they would have been able to adhere to religion and with more perseverance. So, and then it is said, وَإِذِ لَآتَيْنَاهُمْ مِن لَدُنَّا أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, and if they had done this, we would have richly rewarded them from ourselves. So remember, this is a whole section of Surah Al Nisa in which the behavior of the hypocrites with the Prophet and with the Muslims is being discussed. And these hypocrites would be strongly supported by the Jews. And once this support was started to, it started to dwindle at times later on. So when this did happen, the Quran then warned them that you are now going to face the ultimatum, and you're going to face this punishment ultimately, and now this attitude of overlooking you is no longer going to be there. So if you in this situation you mend your ways, and if you are given any directive, you follow it, especially if it is given regarding jihad, because this was at hand. We know from the Quran that very soon the believers would be pitted against the disbelievers, although this never happened in history, and because of the fact that the mushrikun, or the Prophet's own tribe and clan, it accepted faith, but nevertheless this was a potentially possible reality. So that is what it is being told to them, that they have to be prepared for this. And وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ فَعَلُوا مَا يُوعَظُونَ بِهِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ وَأَشَدَّ تَثْبِيتًا, that if this is something that they would have vouched to follow, it would have been seemly for them with regards to their adherence to religion. And then once again, وَلَهَدَيْنَاهُمْ صِرَاطًا مُسْتَقِيمًا, we would have richly rewarded them from ourselves and guided them to the straight path. وَلَهَدَيْنَاهُمْ صِرَاطًا مُسْتَقِيمًا وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِم مِّنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا ذَلِكَ الْفَضْلُ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَكَفَىٰ بِاللَّهِ عَلِيمًا. Tell them, those who obey God and His Messenger, it is they who shall dwell with those whom God has bestowed with favor, the prophets, the truthful, the witnesses, and the righteous. How good are these companions! This is a blessing of God, and for this sufficient is the knowledge of God. So the word Siddiq actually refers to people who are truthful in their knowledge and deeds, and at every instance prove this truthfulness through their words and actions. And the word Shuhada, which is the plural of Shaheed, refers to those who bear witness to the truth, even if this means to put their lives in danger, in jeopardy. So it is being said that those who will obey the Prophet, so for them, their reward would be that in the hereafter they will have the company of God's prophets, the truthful, the witnesses to the truth, the righteous people who are the Salihin, and this is the best possible companionship that they can imagine. ذَلِكَ الْفَضْلُ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَالْكَفَى بِاللَّهِ عَلِيمًا. This is a blessing of God, and sufficient is the knowledge of God. So when it is said that sufficient is the knowledge of God, it means that regarding the person who deserves his blessings, he knows his people and is not aware of them. So he very well knows what is to be done with people who are really up for his cause. And then it is said, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu خذوا حذركم فانفروا ثبات أو انفروا جميعا وإن منكم لمن ليبطئن فإن أصابتكم مصيبة قال قد أنعم الله علي إذ لم أكن معهم شهيدا. Believers, take hold of your arms, خذوا حذركم, and go out to help the oppressed in detachments or together, as the situation demands. Surely there are those among you who will become very slack at such instances. Then, if some harm befalls you, they will say, God has been gracious to me that I was not present with them. So again, this attitude of the hypocrites is being mentioned, that they will try to come to the Prophet and tell them that if they did not, if some harm befalls them, they would say that God has been gracious to me, which means that I did not go with you and I was saved by the Almighty. As Islam akum marhum shahida. So whenever something bad would befall them, they would praise themselves for not going out with the Prophet and his army, thinking that, well, God has saved them. Wala in asabakum fadlu min Allah la yaqulanna ka allam takum bainakum wa bainahu mawadda ya laytani kuntu ma'ahum fa'afuza fawzan azima. And if a favor from God comes to you, they will surely say, and will say in a manner as if there never existed any relationship of love between you and them. Would that I had been with them, I would have then achieved great success. So now, if something good befell the Muslims, they would express their regret and say that I wish, or we wish that we would have been with the Muslims. And this they would say as if there was no relationship of love between the two. I mean, of course, if some favor had befallen the Muslims, at least they could have be happy for the Muslims, for those who had gone out to fight. One thing that you might need to note here is that the actual word which is used here is hizr. If you look at verse 71, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu khuzu hizrakum. So it means to guard oneself from some danger and calamity. And from this initial meaning, it developed to mean a shield, because it is used to protect one's self from the enemies, like an armor. And this is its special usage. So when it is said khuzu hizrakum, it actually means to take up the shield which is going to protect you. But in its general usage, it refers to arms. I mean, its special meaning is the shield, but when it is used more generally, it does not specify the shield. It is actually referring to the ammunition and arms which people have. And it is used in this very connotation here. So when it is said that you fight with them in small groups and in detachments or together, this actually is something that we have already known in modern warfare, that when this is done in small groups to surprise the enemy in an attack, it is often termed as guerrilla warfare. So this is what the Quran is telling them. So they have to understand that as far as their intention is concerned, if they think that they are happy because Muslims have in some way not achieved the success and some calamity has befallen them, and they think that because they never went with the Muslims, then God has protected them, this is not the case. So we have to understand this inner psyche of the hypocrites, and they were posing themselves to be Muslims. They mostly belonged to the Jews, but they were basically a thorn in their ranks. And throughout this Medinan period, for a very long time, the Quran did not want to expose them. The Almighty did not want to expose them, because there were still people who were bordering on hypocrisy, and there was a chance that they would give up their hypocrisy and enter faith. So this whole attitude of forgiveness and overlooking them and pardoning them was there. But now they had made themselves worthy of being exposed. So this is the whole milieu in which this directive is being given. And then it is said, فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يَشْرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا بالآخرة ومن يقاتل في سبيل الله فيقتل أو يغلب فسوف نؤتيه أجرا عظيما. So only those should come out to fight for the cause of God who are willing to give up this world in return for the next. In return for the next. For them are glad tidings that whoever fights for the cause of God, whether he dies or triumphs, on him we shall surely bestow a rich recompense. So the implication is that if they do participate in any campaign because of their wretchedness, then the minimum requirement of faith and Islamic brotherhood was that they should feel happy on the success which is given to the Muslims. But of course, they never had this magnanimity, and they would feel bad. And such people are not needed who, in the words, they become, they would shed just a few drops of blood and still gain a lot of war booty. So remember, this is something that would happen in the case of the hypocrites. They would stake tall claims. When the time would come, they would just back away. And then if some calamity would fall upon the Muslim, they would just say that, yes, well, it is fine, that God has protected me. And this they would say as if they would have no relationship of love and affiliation with the Muslims. And this is what the Quran has said. And now it has said that if you want to move out and fight a battle and do so for the cause of God, so only they should come forth who have really the capacity and the intention that they can endanger themselves. Yashrul hayat ad-dunya. They can give preference to the life of the hereafter, to this life of the world. And then وَمَن يُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَيُقْتَلْ أَوْ يَغْلِبْ فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. And whoever, for them are glad tidings that whoever fights for the cause of God, whether he dies or triumphs, on him we shall surely bestow a rich recompense. So just to give you a recap, that as far as the Prophet is concerned and the jihad that is being discussed here, and its preparation is more being discussed here, we have to understand that the Prophet in his own times was commanded to do two types of jihad. And when I refer to the word jihad, I'm actually referring to the word qital, which means armed warfare. So one of them was against oppression and injustice, which is going to come up in the very next verse, which we shall study inshallah in the next week. But a greater part of the jihad that the Prophet and his companions were allowed, or they were actually commanded to undertake, was as a punishment for the people who were intentionally denying the truth. So remember, this qital or this armed warfare should not in any way be construed as expanding the Muslim empire in any way, or spreading religion by the sword as is generally understood. This was basically punishment from God. So God acted as God's justice. And formerly, in the case of the other messengers of God, the other prophets of God, this happened through natural calamities. So if you look at the past prophets, the ancient nations like the Ad, the Samud, the people of Lot, the people of Shuaib, so all of these, they were faced with this imbroglio. They were faced with this ordeal that if they would be denying a prophet of God, a messenger of God intentionally, then they would be facing death. And this is what happened for all the polytheistic nations in the past. The only difference that in the case of Prophet Muhammad, and of course in the case of Prophet Moses also, was that this time the punishment was to be meted out by the hands of the believers through their swords. And as such, they were acting as cyclones and typhoons, the way they acted in the times of the previous messengers. So just as in the previous messengers' times, the cyclones and the typhoons and the earthquakes destroyed their nations, this time it was the task of the believers that they should be acting as God's instrument of justice and punishing these disbelievers. And this punishment for disbelief can only be undertaken by a messenger and his companions, because it is actually God who is telling them to do so. In no way can this qital or armed warfare be extended today. The only armed warfare that can be extended is the one that we will discuss next time, and which occurs in fact in the very next verse, which says that you should, if you have to take up arms to protect people who are being oppressed or being persecuted, and all diplomatic ties fail, then yes, you can do so. That is the only qital or armed warfare that was done in the Prophet's times that can still be done today. But as far as waging war against the Jews and the Christians or the idolaters is concerned, this is something that was specific to the prophetic era. This cannot be undertaken today. This is just the prerogative of God's messengers. And in God's messengers' times also, which we call the prophetic era, it was basically God who was undertaking this whole exercise, and he was just using his messenger and his companions as instruments of his justice. So with this, I come to an end to today's discussion on these verses. And before I start off with the literal and idiomatic translation, if you have any questions regarding what we have studied, you have the time to raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our first question comes from Shaban Ansari. Please go ahead.
ये जो मुनाफिकीन थे, जैसे आपने बताया कि ये यहूद में से ज्यादा थे, तो मुशरिकीन अरब जो है वो इनकी बातों में आके मुनाफिकीन में शामिल हुए, क्योंकि ये लोग तो हसद और जेलिसी की वजह से और पहचानते थे, इन्हें पता था ये अपने आप को पढ़ा लिखा और उनको उम्मी कहा करते थे। तो अल्लाह ताला ने इनको मुनाफिकीन को बहुत ज्यादा ढील मतलब देते रहे अल्लाह ताला इनको मुसलसल, और मतलब इनका मुकम्मल इनका खात्मा नहीं किया गया। और मेरा ख्याल है कि नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के बाद और खुलफा के ज़माने में भी फितना उठाने में इनका किरदार रहा होगा। तो इसकी क्या वजह है कि अल्लाह ताला ने इनका मुकम्मल खात्मा नहीं किया? और ये वजह है कि मुशरिकीन अरब जो है वो जो अल्लाह ताला ढील दे रहे हैं कि तुम वापस पलट आओ और तो फिर अल्लाह ताला तुम्हें बख्श देगा, तो वो इनके प्रोपेगेंडे से मतलब ये कि अपने आप को बचाएं, इसलिए कह रहे हैं अल्लाह ताला।
So you see, you have to make a distinction in both parts of your question. First, there were no hypocrites from among the mushrikun. So the mushrikun or the idolaters, they would clearly say that they are mushrik, and they would claim to believe multiple gods, and they never became hypocrites. So a very large part of the hypocrites actually came from the Jews, and they are the ones about whom we have discussed earlier on in Surah Baqarah, that there was one group among them which had become totally diehard, and the Almighty says that their hearts had been sealed and there was a veil on their eyes. But then there was a second group among them who wanted reconciliation between Islam and Muslims. So it is basically these hypocrites which are more in discussion in the Quran. And as far as the mushrikun are concerned, they had an entirely different outlook. So to come to your question, we have to understand that there was like a liaison between the two. So these Jews, when they saw the hypocrites amongst the Muslim ranks, when they saw that they could use the mushrikun as an instrument for their own intent and purposes, they knew that the mushrikun also held a grudge against the Muslims. And they themselves, the Jews themselves, wanted that they too, of course, take advantage of this grudge. So they would patronize these Christians, these mushrikun, and by patronizing them, they would actually whisper to them various objections against religion, and these objections would be then actually they would be raised against the Muslims in their gatherings. So these are the distinctions that you have to make, that the mushrikun primarily never professed towards hypocrisy. It was the Jews who did so. And the second part of your question is that if the idolaters could be in any way blamed for what they have been doing, and the people of the book or the hypocrites were amongst them, then I think this is a distinction that you have to make in a separate plane. The two could have been very avowed enemies of Islam, and they were. And we do know that on many occasions, on the occasions of many battles, they had this personal vendetta, a common enemy from which they wanted to seek this revenge. But as a nation, we know that the Jews and the Christians, they subscribed to monotheism, and the idolaters did not. So the fate of both these was destined to be different. So does this answer your question?
You, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, this is about hypocrites when they're asked to go to the courts like Jews, while in case they're met with some calamity, they are said to approach the Prophet with some explanation that they only wanted to better themselves and reconcile. So they wanted to understand the link between going to the courts of the Jews and meeting some calamity. What does that mean?
Okay, let me just take out the verse. You see, this is this verse which says that Alam tara ilal lazin. This is the very first verse that we started to study today. That have you not seen those who claim to have professed faith, referring to the hypocrites, in that what has been revealed to you, and also in that what has been revealed before you, but want that, leaving aside the messenger, they go to a taghut to answer all the cases that they would put forth. So basically, what is being said is that this is what they do. But when they would be told that they should not go to the court of Abdullah of Ka'b bin Ashraf, or the person that they are going to, and instead they should come to the Prophet. They would actually رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ صُدُودًا. They would, I mean, totally turn away from him, because of course they thought that they will not give a favorable verdict. So upon this, it is being said that now you're going to the Jews and asking for a verdict from their courts. But what will happen to them when in future the power of these Jews will be weakened? The power of these Jews will be weakened, and you would no longer be in a position to go to them. And Muslims also will stop overlooking your blemishes and treat you sternly. So when this is going to happen in future, then you're going to come running to the Prophet and ask for his verdict. So basically what is being said is that this is what is happening today, but what will happen? As the Quran says, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. But what will happen when a calamity befalls them on account of what their hands committed? Then they will come to you swearing by God. So this is like saying that this is what you're doing today, but tomorrow, when you would not have an option for this, you would come running to the Prophet to solve their cases, because now the Jews will not be in a position to help them, and of course the Muslims would stop overlooking their blemishes. So they would have no place to go. They would be left high and dry. The only option they would have would be to come to the Prophet. So that is what is being mentioned. So this is like saying that this is what your present is, but not very long from now you will not be able to do what you're doing now, and you will be forced to come to the Prophet. So instead of being forced at that time, would that you'd have given up this attitude at this time and come to him, at the Prophet, and then sought forgiveness from him, and of course at the same time come to his court of justice.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Next question, this is a bit of a long one. So this one asks, in 627 CE, during the Battle of the Trench, the Banu Qurayza tribe was accused of collaborating with the enemy forces led by the Quraysh tribe from Mecca. After the battle, the Muslims, led by the Prophet Muhammad, besieged the Banu Qurayza's fortress. Subsequently, the men of the tribe were executed, the women and children sold into slavery, and their properties were confiscated. In this event, known as the Massacre of Banu Qurayza, or the siege of Banu Qurayza, happened before the conquest of Mecca. So before Itmam al-Hujjah. So how do you explain this, and on what premise did this massacre happen?
Well, although this is something that we are going to study later on, because this battle of Banu Qurayza is discussed in Surah Ahzab, but just to give you this brief answer, that Saad bin Muaz, who was appointed as an arbitrator, because this was something that they themselves wanted, the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza, they wanted that someone who was their ally, and he was Saad bin Muaz, be appointed, and the decision was actually given to him. He was the judge. It's not that the Prophet made this decision, and he decided the matter according to the Torah. The Torah says that the punishment for high treason is that all men would be put to death and all women and children would be made slaves. And this is precisely what happened. So the verdict that was pronounced by an ally was this, and it was in accordance with the Torah, which means their own book. So it was their own book that was implemented in that case. I'm just giving a brief answer because we're going to discuss this in a lot of detail in our coming surahs, because this is an issue which needs a lot of explanation. But maybe you can wait for that time. Otherwise, my brief answer is that it's like the verdict of the Torah was implemented on them. That is the brief answer.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the topic-related questions. So I think we can move on now.
Okay, so now I'm going to start the literal translation of today's verses, so that you can come closer to the text. Please try to note down these vocabulary issues, because even until now you must have observed that there's so many prepositions and words and letters and verbs. They keep on repeating themselves by just having a little change of form. And if you can just follow them, very soon, inshallah, you'll be able to have a grip on this vocabulary and understand directly the Quran. So it says, Alam tara ila allazina yaz'umuna annahum amanu. So, Alam tara, so is a question, lam is not, tara is you. Have you, or Alam tara would be have you not, or have you not seen. So tara is to see, alam is have you not. So have you not seen, ila towards, allazina, those who, yaz'umuna, who claim, annahum, that they, amanu, they believe, bima unzila ilayka, on that which has been revealed to you. So this is a claim that they stake, that they believe in what has been revealed to you, of course referring to the Quran. Wama unzila min qablik, wa and ma, that unzila, revealed, min qablika, before you. So they make this claim that they believe in the Quran which was revealed to you and what was revealed before you, of course referring to the previous scriptures. Yuriduna, yuriduna would mean wanting, an, that, yatahakamu, they go for judgment, ila, towards, at-taghut, the rebellious person. So at-taghut, we've already discussed, refers to Ka'b ibn Ashraf, who was their leader, and about him it was said that people must not go to him, they must come to the Prophet, but they would still go to him. وَقَدْ أُمِرُوا أَنْ يَكْفُرُوا بِهِ, wa, and qad, indeed, umiru, they had been asked, an, that, yakfuru bihi, to reject him. They were directed to reject him. So they go to this person to seek his judgment. Yatahakamu lit-taghut. Whereas waqad umiru, they had been ordered an yakfuru bihi, to reject him. Wa, and yuridu shaitan, yuridu wants, shaitan, Satan, an, that, yudillahum, an yudillahum, that he leads you astray, an yudillahum, that he leads them astray. Zalalam ba'ida actually is like an emphasis, which means leading them far astray. Basically, it's yudillahum that you need to understand. The rest is like an emphatic expression to express the waywardness. So what is meant here is by yuridu shaitanu an yudillahum, which means that Satan wants to lead them into error, and zalalam ba'ida would mean deep error. So Satan wants to lead them into deep error. Wa, and iza, when, qila lahum, it is said to them, ta'alaw, come, ila, towards, ma anzalallah, what God has revealed, ma, what anzala, revealed, Allah, God. So when it is asked, or when they are told to come towards what God has revealed, wa ila rasul, wa, and ila, towards, ar-rasul, the messenger, and to the messenger, ra'aita, you see, al-munafiqina, the hypocrites, yasudduna anka sududa, they try to withhold from you. Yasudduna means, yasudduna anka actually is one expression or one word, which referring to the fact that they turn away from you, that they withdraw from you. Sududa is again like an emphasis, that just as zalala was in the previous verse. So zalala and sududa, they are of similar nature. In Arabic language, they're such words, they are meant to express emphasis. So basically it's yasudduna sududa, which means they really want to turn back, and there is an emphasis in this turning back, there is a stress in this turning back. So what is being said here, that when they are asked to come towards what God has revealed and towards God's messenger, you see these hypocrites that they turn away from you. Fa kaifa, fa, therefore, kaifa, how, iza, when, asabat hum, strikes them, asaba, strikes hum, them, musiba, calamity. So fa kaifa iza asabatum musibatun would mean, so what will happen when a calamity strikes them? Bima, because, kaddamat, sent forward, aydihim, their hands, because of what their hands sent forward, implying their deeds. So kaddamat aydihim, because it's what your deeds do, they are a means of your reward or punishment. So that is why this expression is used in the Quran to imply the fact that whatever they have done in this world. So bima kaddamat aydihim would mean whatever they have sent forward, whatever their hands have sent forward to the hereafter. That is what is implied. Summa ja'uka, summa, then, ja'uka, come to you, yahlifuna billahi, while swearing by God. And what did they swear by God? In aradna, in, not, aradna, we wanted, illa, except, ihsana, betterment, wa, and, tawfiqa, reconciliation. So what is being said here is that what these people would do is that it is being said that whenever some calamity, what will happen to them when this calamity falls to them because of what their hands sent forward, then they will come to you, yani, swearing oaths, O Prophet, and saying this, that we only intended ihsan and tawfiq in aradna, in not aradna, wanted, illa except, not wanted except betterment and reconciliation. So this is a false excuse or a lame excuse that they would give. And then it is said, Ulaika allazina ya'lamullahu ma fi qulubihim. So this is like exposing them. Ulaika, they, allazina who, ya'lamullah, God knows, ya'lamu knows, Allah, God. So these are the people about whom God knows ma, what, fi, in, qulubihim, in their hearts. So qulub is the plural of qalb, and it means heart. So these are the people about whom God knows what is in their hearts. Remember in the previous verse, when they would be called to account, they would say that we only wanted betterment, we only wanted reconciliation, but the Quran says you are lying. God fully knows what is in their hearts. فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ. So the Prophet is being told, therefore, أَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ, withdraw from them, ignore them. وَعِزْهُمْ. So wa and. So izhum, counsel them, advise them. Wa and. Kul, tell. Lahum, them. Tell them. Fi anfusihim. About them, tell them about them. Kaulam baligha. So kaulam baligha would mean something which is really heartening, something which is really going to take roots in their heart and they're really going to understand it. So what is being said is that when these people come to you and they say that they only wanted betterment and reconciliation, they are lying, because God knows what is in their hearts. So at this time, ignore them. So I mean, the time has not arrived to take them to task. At this time, ignore them. فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ وَعِزْهُمْ وَقُلْ لَهُمْ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ قَوْلًا بَلِيغًا. وَعِزْهُمْ would mean counsel them and tell them فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, about them, something which really takes root in their hearts, which means tell them something which is very eloquent, something which they're really going to understand. So it's still like this this situation in which this reconciliation and this overlooking is going on. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Wa and, ma not. Arsalna, we sent. Min rasulin, from a messenger. Illa, except. لِيُطَاعَ, so that he is obeyed. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, with God's permission. And we have not sent any messenger except that he is obeyed with God's permission. Wama arsalna, and we have not sent min rasulin, any messenger, except illa, except liyuta', that he be obeyed, bi iznillah, with izn, permission, Allah, God, with the permission of God. Wa and law, if, annahum, they, is when zalamu. Zalamu means being unjust. Anfusahum, to their own selves. Walau annahum is zalamu anfusahum would mean, and if when they had been unjust to themselves, ja'uka, they should have come to you. Ja'uka. Fastaghfarullah. Then sought God's forgiveness. Fastaghfaru. They should have sought forgiveness. Allah, from God. Wa and. Wastaghfara lahumur rasulu. Istaghfara, to seek forgiveness, lahum, for them, ar-rasul, the messenger, and the messenger too would have sought forgiveness. So like it is like saying that these people should have come to you when you had done something unjust, which would be unjust to your souls. You would have come to you and then sought forgiveness from God. Wastaghfara lahumur rasula, and the rasul would also have sought forgiveness for them. And then what would happen? La wajadu, they would have found Allah, God, Tawwab, accepting of repentance, Rahima, merciful. So had this happened, that they would have come to you, La wajadu, they would have found God to be Tawwab and Rahim. They would have found God to be forgiving and merciful. Fala, fa, therefore, la, not. Wa, Warabbika, of course, now Warabbika is like an oath, by your Lord. So, no, by your Lord. La yu'minuna, la, not. Yu'minuna, they will profess faith. Hatta, until. Yuhakkimuka, they make you as the judge. Yuhakkimuka, they make you as the judge. Fima, in things. shajara bainahum, in which there is a dispute amongst yourselves. Shajara, dispute, bainahum, amongst yourselves. Summa, then, la, not, yajidu, they find, fi anfusihim, in themselves, fi in anfusihim, themselves, haraja, any uneasiness, mimma, about, qazaita, you have what you have decided, wa, and yusallimu taslima, you fully submit to his verdict. Yusallimu taslima is, again, the word taslima is like an emphasis which occurs to just emphasize the word yusallimu, which actually means to accept something. So literally it would mean, and not by your God, they are not believers until they make you your hakam, their hakam, they make you their judge, fima shajara bainahum, in things in which they have a dispute. Then they do not find in their hearts any unease about what you have decided, and you accept the verdict. Yusallimu taslima. Wa, and, law, if, anna, we, katabna alayhim. So katabna alayhim, make mandatory on them. So had we made mandatory upon them, that, uqtulu anfusakum, kill yourselves. Of course, referring to the fact that kill your people. Aw, or ukhruju min diyarihim. So come out from your houses or from your places. So diyarikum, your places. So what is being said is that had we made it mandatory upon them, walau, wa, and law, if, anna, we, katabna alayhim, ordained for them that they kill themselves, uqtulu anfusakum, aw, or come out of their houses, what would happen? Ma fa'aluhu, ma, not, fa'aluhu, they would have done. They would not have done this. Illa qalilum minhum, except for a few of them. Illa, except, qalil, few, minhum, from among them. So what is being said here is that had God made it mandatory upon them to kill their people because of polytheism, as had happened in the times of Moses also, or to come out of your homes, this is of course something that is an allusion to the times of Moses when both these things happened. Then the Quran says, ma fa'aluhu, not, they would not have done this except a few of them. So only a few of them would have obeyed. Wa, and, law, if, annahum, they would, fa'alu, done, ma, what, yu'azuna bihi, they are being counseled for, yu'azuna, being counseled, bihi, about, la, therefore, kana, was, khaira, better, lahum, for them, wa, and, ashadda, stronger, tasbita, adherence. Of course, applying adherence to religion. So what is being said here is that had they done what is being advised to them, walau annahum fa'alu, had they done what is being advised to them, lakana khairal lahum, it would have been khairal lahum, better for them, lahum, for them, wa, and, ashadda, stronger, tasbita, adherence, and it would have been better for them as far as adherence to religion is concerned. Wa, and, izan, then, la'ataynahum, we would have given them, milladunna, from us, ajran, reward, azima, great. So if they had done this, then we would have given them from ourselves a great reward. Wa, and, lahadaynahum, we would have guided them, siratam mustaqima, to the straight path. So what is being said here is that if we would have made them, if we would have made this compulsory upon them to kill their people for their misdemeanor regarding monotheism and ask them to come out of their houses for jihad, very few of them would have done this. But if they had paid heed to their advice and they had come out and done so, then God says we would have greatly rewarded them and guided them to the straight path. Wa, and, man, he, yutir, is obedient, Allah, God, and he who is obedient to God. Wa, and, ar-rasul, and the messenger. Fa-ulaika, therefore he, ma'a, with, or in the company of, allazina, those, an'amallahu alayhim, whom God has blessed. Anama, blessed, Allah, God, alayhim, on them, or whom God has looked upon with favor. And who are they? From among an-nabiyyin, the prophets, as-siddiqeen, the truthful, wa, and ash-shuhada, the witnesses, wa, and as-salihin, the righteous, wa, and hasuna, better, like ulaika for them, Rafika, this companionship. So how good is this companionship? So in other words, what is being said is that he or they who believe in, who are obedient to God and to his messenger, then they will be in the company of those whom God has given inam, those whom God has blessed. Allazina an'amallahu alayhim. And who are those? They are from among the prophets, from and these truthful and the witnesses and the righteous. And hasuna ulaika rafika. And how good are these companions? Hasuna, good. Ulaika, these. Rafika, companions. Zalik al-fadlu min Allah. Zalika, this. Al-fadl, blessing. Min, from. Allah, God. So this is a blessing from God. Wa kafa billahi alima. Wa, and kafa, sufficient or enough. Billahi, God. Alima, regarding knowledge. So God is sufficient regarding knowledge, which means that sufficient is the knowledge of God, or enough is the knowledge of God. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu khuzu hizrakum fanfiru subatin avinfiru jami'a. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O those who believe, khuzu, take up, hizrakum, your arms, hizr, arms, kum, your. So those who believe, take up your arms. Fanfiru, therefore go out, subatin, in small groups, in detachments, or infiru, or go out, jamia, in larger groups together. So what is being said here is that when the time for jihad comes, you take up your arms, pick up your arms, and you can go in small detachments and you can go together, jamia, together. Wa, and inna minkum lamalla yubatti anna. Wa, and inna is indeed, minkum, from among you, laman, those who, layubatti anna, who are very slack. I mean, which means that they are very lazy and they would not go. Fa, therefore, in, when, asabatkum musibatun. Asabatkum, asaba means comes to you, comes actually, kum is you, comes to you, musiba, comes to you a calamity. Musiba is calamity. Qala, they say, qad, indeed, anamallahu alayya, anama, to do favor, Allah, God. So God has done favor, alayya, on me, is when lam, not akun, I was not ma'ahum, with them, shahida, present. So this is what is being said, that there are some among you who are slack, who are just opportunists. So when some calamity befalls you, وَفَإِنْ أَصَابَتْكُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, that person says that God has been kind to me. أَنَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيَّ, God has been kind to me. He has looked upon me with favor because I was not with them present. I was not present with them. So the calamity was faced by them and I was protected. Wa, and la'in, if asabakum, reaches you, fadl, blessing, minallah, from God. So on the other hand, if some blessing reaches you, so the previous verse tells us that if some musibat or some calamity befell the Muslims, they would feel happy that they remain protected. But on the other hand, if some blessing comes to you from God, asabakum, comes to you, fadl, blessing, minallah, from God, la yaqulanna, they say, ka'allam takum bainakum wa bainahum mawadda, as if, ka'anna, as if, lam, not, takun, is, bainakum, between you, wa, and between him or that person, mawadda, any ties of love or friendship. And what do they say? Ya laytani, would that I, kuntu, I was, marahum, with them, fa'afuza fawzan azima, fa, therefore, afuza, would have achieved, fawzan azima, great success. Now the opposite is being said, that if some blessing would come to you from God, these people would say, and they would say as if there is no relationship of love between you and them. Ka'allam takum, as if lam takun, not, bainakum, between you, or bainahu, and between them, mawadda, any relationship of love. What would they say? Ya laytani kuntu ma'ahum, I wish, or we wish, kuntu, I was ma'ahum, with them. And in that case, fa'afuza, I would have achieved fawzan azima, great success. Obviously, this is that attitude of being an opportunist that is being reflected. Fal yuqatil, fa, therefore, al yuqatil means, fal yuqatil means people should fight. Fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah, in the way of God. Allazina, those who, yashruna, who are giving preference. Al hayata dunya, regarding this this worldly life, over this worldly life. Bil akhirah, the hereafter. So what is said is here that those people should come to fight. Sorry. Fal yuqatil means those people should pick up arms who, in the way of God, who would prefer the hereafter to this world, who would always prefer, Yashruna would prefer to this world the hereafter. In other words, they are the ones who give preference to the hereafter instead of this world. Wa and man, those, yuqatil, who fight, or he who fights. So the word man can be translated both as a singular or a plural one. We can do both. So if you take the singular, it would mean wa and man he yuqatil fights fi sabilillah, in the cause of God. Fa yuqtal, and is killed. Aw yaghlib, fa yuqtal, he dies, he is killed. Aw yaghlib, or he is successful, he triumphs. Fa sawfa, fa, therefore, sawfa, very soon. Nu'tihi, we will give him. Ajran, reward. Azima, great. So he who fights for the cause of God is either killed or achieves success. We will very soon give that person great reward. Ajran Azima, great reward. So with this we come to an end to this literal translation as well. So if you have any questions regarding this literal translation, please raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Shabana Ansari, please go ahead.
इसमें जो वर्ड लयुबत्ति अन्ना है, इसका रूट वर्ड क्या है? क्योंकि इसमें आगे पीछे
बता।
लाम, जी,
Ba, ta and Hamza.
बा, त्वा और हमजा,
Hamza.
इसको बोलेंगे कैसे?
लयुबत्त अन्ना, मन ला युबत्त
नहीं,
अन्ना. So this
जो
is like
रूट वर्ड है, जो रूट वर्ड है उसको
बता,
कैसे बोलेंगे?
बता, बता.
बता, बता, ठीक है, शुक्रिया.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, in verse 67, Qur'an says about the hypocrites that if they had acted upon the advice and directions of the Prophet, Allah would have bestowed them with great reward. What is the nature of this great reward? Is it something worldly, as it appears from the context of the verse, or in the hereafter?
So if you look at the Quran, it tells us that when you obey the messenger of God, then that reward is given not only in this world but also in the hereafter. So it's like a double reward, both in this world and in the hereafter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it so far for all the topic related questions. If you have a topic related question, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, Imran, do you have a topic related question?
No, I actually have something off topic which I read last week, so I wanted to ask Dr. Saleem. Sorry.
Could you wait until we're done with the topic? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sania, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I have a question. I have a question regarding Surah Fatiha. We are in the verse how can we connect?
Sania, I'm really sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Right now we're just taking topic related questions. So anyone who has
it is related to the topic.
Well, we're talking about Surah Al Nisa right now, not Surah Al Fatiha.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say it in the other way round. How can we connect Surah Al Nisa ayah 69 with Surah Fatiha? And my second question is that from
let's take one question at a time. So if my answer to your first question would be that Surah Fatiha says Anamta alayhim ghayril maghdub alayhim waladhdallin. So it says that Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal lazina anamta alayhim, that God guide us towards the straight path, this path of those whom you've looked upon with favor. And that is something that has been left open at that time. So here in Surah An-Nisa, the Anamta alayhim are actually defined, and they are being told that they are ones who would be in the company of the prophets, in the company of the truthful, the righteous, and the witnesses. So basically, this verse is explaining the expression An'amta alayhim of Surah Fatiha.
Yes, but from the people of our age and the people after the age of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no
Hmm.
one can become a salihin or a martyr or a shohadin or the truthful or a messenger from these people. If we obey Allah and the Rasul, we cannot be a salihin or shahadin.
That is not what is being said. It is being said that they will be in the company of these people.
Yani only
فَأُولَٰئِكَ
we can
أَنْعَمَ
be in the
اللَّهُ
company, but we
Yes.
cannot become ourselves a salihin. If someone
See,
from
we
us
still
or
can become
from the later
Salihin.
age
The
after
only
Prophet
thing
Muhammad
is,
sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
yes, the only thing is that we cannot become prophets of God. Other than that, Siddiqeen, Shuhada, Salihin, all these are possible. And the Quran has actually referred to this in Surah Waqia when it says, Sullatu min al-awwaleen wa qalilu min al-akhirin, that amongst the earliest generations you will have these righteous Muslims in a great number. But in the later generations you still have them, but they might be in a smaller number. So the only thing that cannot be achieved is that you cannot become a prophet of God in any case. But you can have the same status as a Siddiq or as a Shaheed or as a Salih.
Mhm.
That these are all statuses, I would say, or positions that are attainable by our own good deeds.
But according to this ayah, prophethood can also be possible
No, that is not possible because what is being said is
if we
فَأُولَٰئِكَ
obey Allah and the Rasul.
مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنَمَ اللَّهُ. They will be with those whom the Almighty has blessed. It's not that they will become prophets of God. They will be in the company of the prophets of God. فَأُولَٰئِكَ
So
مَعَ
if they
الَّذِينَ.
can be, if this ayah is talking about the company of the prophet or the salihin, it means that now we cannot become a salihin or shahidin ourselves.
No, actually, as I
We
said,
can
this
only
is
be, if we obey Allah and the Rasul, we can only be in the company of those people, but no one from among us, any pious person, can never become himself
yes,
a
I get your
shahid or
point.
a saleh.
Yes, I get your point. So
Mhm.
this doesn't mean that you cannot
Mhm.
be amongst them. Because you see, the word Siddiq is a person who is a truthful person, a Shaheed is a person who bears witness to the truth, and a Salihin is a person who is a righteous person. So you see, what is being said here is that those with whom God has shown favor, they will be in the company of these people who have, I mean, who are these four categories of people. So automatically we know
Mhm.
that the first category is something which is unattainable. I mean, of course, we cannot be messenger ourselves. So what is being said
Mhm.
is that the
Mhm.
people to whom God has shown His favor will be in the company of such individuals. And another verse
Mhm.
of the Quran, which I just referred to, in Surah Waqia, it says that these righteous people, these outstanding people who are foremost of the faith, about them, the Quran says, "Sullatu min al-awwaleen." Such people of this high category amongst the
Mhm.
truthful, amongst the shuhada, amongst the salihin, they will be few in the later
Mhm.
generations and very large in number in the earliest generations. So you see, it's not that you have to understand a Quranic verse directly from that particular place. There are other instances in the Quran which clarify uh, certain things. So what is being said here is, I do get your point. What you're saying, that when we are being said that we
Mhm.
are going to be in the company of the righteous,
Mhm.
then of course we are not the righteous. That's not what is being implied. It might apparently
Mhm.
seem that is being implied here. What is implied here is
Mhm.
that you yourself would be raised to this status and you'll be in the company of these people. But of course, we know from other parts of the Quran that being a prophet would not be possible. But as Surah Waqia says, that all these three categories are achievable. The only thing is that there will be very few people in the earlier generations and in the later generations, and very large number of people in the earlier generations. So that is what is being said here.
Mhm.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Dr.
Okay.
Saleem.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jazakallah.
Next question asks, in verses 60 onwards, when it's referred to the court of Jew named Ka'b bin Ashraf, how can we specify that it's referring to him specifically? He can be one of the Jews to whom the hypocrites would go to.
Actually, this is like a historical corroboration. I mean, a person can up with a different interpretation, and we will look at it. But in all probability, when we look at the word at-taghut and we look at his connotation that who exactly would the person would be, then the one who stands out is Ka'b ibn Ashraf, because he would hold court. He would be the person to whom people would go for their own judgments, and he would be the most prominent among the Jews who would do so. He was like the leader of them. So, I mean, this is like a historical reference, and if someone says that there is someone else who is implied here, then he should come up with some reasoning, and maybe that if that reasoning is more convincing, we can accept him. But nonetheless, it does not make any difference in the interpretation of the verse, even if you regard it to be someone else. The interpretation of the verse is that instead of coming to the Prophet, they are going to a taghut, whoever that is. That is the gist. Now, it is just a matter of further explanation that we find out exactly who a taghut is, who is implied by the word at-taghut. But that should not make any substantive difference on the interpretation of the verse, because the interpretation is that instead of coming to the court of the Prophet, they are going to the court of a taghut person.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Sania, do you have a topic-related question?
Yes, please. Another question. What were the blessings and favors that were bestowed upon the Shahideen and Siddiqeen and Salihin? What were the specific favors?
Right. So this is again something which the Quran is specified in a number of places, that they will be bestowed with a very high place in paradise, and we know that paradise itself will have various levels, and these people would be at the highest levels. I mean, of course, the prophets of God would be perhaps at the highest levels, and others, of course, would be with them. So the blessings themselves have not been literally specified, but what we have been generally told is that paradise itself will have various levels. So it's like telling us that such people will be in the same level as these people. Now, what that level is, that remains to be seen, but it does seem something to be a very, very high place.
But the ayah, the blessings and the favors, they were in the past tense, as if they were already bestowed upon them, not to be in the future in paradise, but they are already bestowed upon them. So what are these blessings?
So
that
when it
were
is said
already bestowed upon them?
They shall dwell with those whom God has bestowed with favor, it is not essential that the past tense is used to connote a past. You see, the Quran in many instances, when it uses the past tense, it actually refers to the certainty of the future. I mean, this is a very common style of the Quran. It implies the past tense for the future in order to indicate the definite nature of the future. So it's like a decision being made. So Allah fa'ulaika anamallahu alayhim would mean what God has destined for them, for what God has decided for them in the future regarding the favors that He has in mind for them. So the past tense is not always used for the past.
So in this world, there were not specific blessings that were bestowed on them.
I mean, we don't have
only
those,
in the future, in the hereafter.
I mean, of course, in this world also they were blessed. I mean, we cannot deny those blessings.
They suffered from a lot of
yes, because of the fact
and all
they suffered, and at the same time,
in this world. So
yes, so that is also something. Yes, because it's not that these blessings are confined to this world. But what is being said is that just as these people would have a very high status in the hereafter, these four categories, in a similar way, we are saying that God, please guide us to the straight path, the path which was followed by these four categories of people, whom you blessed.
It means that we are asking for the hardships and for the
no, we are not actually. What we are saying is the blessings. We are basically asking for the blessings of these people. I mean, we are asking to be in the company of these people who have been blessed by God. So it's not the blessings that we are asking, because you see, these people earned their status in this world and in the next world because of the suffering that they went to, the perseverance that they showed. So they have already attained that status in this world and in the hereafter. But what is being said is that God, please give us the company of these people with whom you have shown favor. Just like we being in the company, the blessings that have already been received by them, we are to be in their company.
So we are asking about the company only, not
of course. That is what the word ma'ah. فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ. They are in the company of these people whom you have blessed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem.
Okay, thank you so much.
Non-topic related questions now. The first one asks, since we have a bunch of them, I'm going to be shortening questions.
Okay.
When it comes to looking at fiancés, why is it okay to look at them and glance at them? Does this not go against not looking or lowering your gaze when it comes to looking at the opposite gender?
I mean, it's like whenever you look at them, it's not it's not that you are going to stare at their physical attributes. This is just that you're looking at their appearance, so that you are sure who are marrying, and if you would like the appearance of that person or not. So this appearance is not about their physical attributes; is their overall appearance. So that directive of Ghazul Basar relates to staring at someone with lust, lustfully staring at someone. That should not be done. When you're looking at someone as a spouse, it should be if you like the appearance of that spouse or not. So that is a subtle thing, and that's different from lustfully staring at someone.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, morality being when you mentioned that morality is consistent across different prophets, just like Adam and Jesus. So did the earlier prophets like Adam and Jesus perform 5 daily prayers because this person was told that the 5 daily prayers was exclusive to Islam? So, and if so, why did Allah alter the religion?
It never happened like this. You see, the 5 daily prayers were specific to Islam. This is a misconception. We know from the Quran that all the prophets of God were asked to pray. I mean, if you look at Moses, you look at Jesus, you look at Abraham, you'll find in Surah Anbiya, in Surah Araf, and many other surahs in which it is said that Fa'awsani bis salat, and Prophet Ishmael was given this directive, Prophet Abraham was given this directive. So salat or praying is something which is common to all prophets. And then we know from history and a narrative of the prophet that all these prophets were asked to pray at the same times as what the prophet was being asked in his own times. So the prayer is a directive that is an age-old directive. It was given to the previous prophets, and of course the language of the prayer would be different in those times regarding the earlier scriptures, because the scriptures had a different language. Otherwise, the times of the 5 prayers were the same for all the prophets.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. When the Quran says Ahlul Jannah would get whatever they want, wouldn't that make the ranking of people become indifferent because they could just ask to be at a higher
So
level?
actually, this should be understood in the light of other verses. When they ask what is meant for them, this will always qualify the fact that there are certain things that they cannot get. I mean, this is like an automatic qualification, that there are certain ranks which are reserved for other people. It actually means within their own rank, whatever they ask for will be given to them. Because from other places in the Quran, we know that these ranks are going to be according to the one's deeds, according to the reward that you get. So higher, the better the deeds, the better the reward. So this is known from other instances of the Quran. So it is not like an absolute directive that you can, you cannot ask to become a prophet, you cannot ask to become a god, because after all, these are also desires. So just as these desires cannot in any way be materialized because of the fact that they don't stand, in a similar way, it is automatically understood that in their own category, in their own level, they can ask for whatever they want.
Thank you very much. This is in regards to the first question, first non-topic related question that asked about lustful versus admiration. They're asking, is there really a difference between them? Because some scholars blanketly make every gaze lustful, and hence they say that you can't gaze, and then people get confused.
So you see, I don't know about other scholars, but I am pretty clear about my understanding that Ghazul Basar implies that you stare at the opposite gender in a lustful way, in a way that base desires arise in you, and we all know what that means. But when you look at it, the overall appearance of a person, appearance does not just mean the face or just a particular part of the body. It's like a general appearance of a person. The Prophet is telling us that you are able to acquaint yourself with that person, and the first thing which you acquaint yourself with the person is not his conversation or her conversation or what he or she is from inside, but the outer appearance, what he or she looks like. So in general, what the looks are like is being referred to, not in any way. There is no sexual insinuation in this at all.
Thank you very much. Imran, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Thank you very much for the explanations. A quick question from Surah Ma'idah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing Isa alayhi salam with قال الله يا عيسى ابن مريم أنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله. So in this one, I know that in at least now that the Christianity does believe that Jesus was God, or at least the Son of God, but is there a sect of Christianity that believed that his mother was also God, or associated her with God or deity? Thank you.
Yes, there is one sect. There are people who believe in her to be the mother of God. Not all of them, but
I see. Does Quran take most of these, the Christians' beliefs and stuff from the Aramaic Christians, which were more in Syria, Christianity, or?
no, the Quran actually takes those Christians which were in Arabia.
I see.
So, and many of them were followers of Simon Peter, who was one of the disciples of Jesus, and many of them had come there. And of course, some followers of Paul also had come there. So, for them, they had actually abrogated the Sharia. It seems that this is something which has to be made distinct. That there are some characteristics of the Christians of the rest of the world and others of just the those of Arabia, and that distinction should be made. Otherwise, we'll mix up the two.
I see.
So, with the Quran, it has no place raised this question of abrogation of the Sharia with the Christians of Arabs. So, it seems that the Christians of Arabs did not accept the abrogation that was made by Saint Paul.
I see. Do you have a talk or a series on the Christian and their beliefs, or no? There's something
Not
that
yet.
you.
Not
Okay.
yet. I would love to, but not yet.
Okay. Thank you very much, Barakallah Feekum.
Thank you. The next question asks, are there restrictions of each level of Jannah mentioned, or is that an unknown?
I would not get that. Is there restrictions of what?
Of each level of Jannah? Yeah, is that mentioned?
Yes, it is mentioned. You see, the Quran in Surah Waqia says, "Kuntum azwajas salasa, fa ashabul maymana wa ashabul mash'ama and sabiqun." So, in the paradise of the righteous, of course, there will be the sabiqun, which will occupy the highest status, and then we have the ashabul yamin, which would be a little less than the sabiqun. So, these are the two broad categories within paradise. But within these broad categories, there also seems to be subcategories. So, within the sabiqun, there would be the sub-sabiqun, and within the ashabul yamin, there could be the sub-ashabul yamin also, because this is evident from various insinuations of the Quran, and there are some ahadith also which tell us that this division would be there. But broadly from the Quran, we know that the sabiqun and the ashabul yamin, they are the two main distinct divisions. The sabiqun being the higher one, and the ashabul yamin are the companions of the right hand, and they'll be slightly less in their reward than the sabiqun.
Do we know if there are restrictions on the rewards that they can get?
Yes, this is in Surah Waqia. You just need to read Surah Waqia and Surah Rahman. Both of us tell us the nature of the rewards that will be given to the Sabiqun and slightly lesser to the Ashabul Yameen.
Thank you very much. Last call since we have a minute left, for off-topic question. If not, we will be ending the session here. I think we are good. All right. So, inshallah, we'll see you again next week, Dr. Saleem. Thank you very much for another wonderful session. And thanks to all the participants for coming through, paying attention, asking questions. Inshallah, we'll see you all again next week. Assalamu alaikum.